Hey, everybody, it is Mike, and I am joined by an amazing Detroit Tigers collector, Steve. I should have asked you beforehand. Is it Nagengast?
Well, close. It's Nagengast.
Nagengast. Okay, sorry
Yeah.
about that. Um, you have an amazing story that I very briefly touched on 2 Sundays ago, and that's how we got introduced from your friend Jim, who watches my channel. And I wanted to bring you on and talk to you about formerly your Tigers collection. You donated it recently. So let's start from the beginning. But I want to can you give a high level overview of your collection and why you donated it? And then I want to go to the very beginning.
Yeah. So very high level. I collected just under 1,200 different Tiger autographed baseballs. They range from 1901 is my oldest, up to, I stopped about 2020 when the signatures became symbols and you can't read the players' names anymore. I kind of
Yes.
lost interest in 2020 and stopped at that time. But I've been collecting since the late 80s. And I started with a Mickey Mantle ball I purchased, not even a Tiger ball. It was on the equivalent of a QVC TV station back then. Mickey Mantle was alive signing baseballs for $50. And Mike, I bought the ball, but man, it was really great. And then, K-Line came to Grand Rapids where I live, and I took that ball and had him sign it. And then Maury Wills came, who was a minor leaguer for the Tigers, never played for the Tigers. He came and I had him sign the ball. A few years later, after I'd learned more about collecting, that the value of that ball today, Mickey Mantle single signed, would be $500 or $600. And because I got those other signatures on it, it's probably worth about $50. You just don't do that. You don't multi-sign a ball unless there's, maybe you have Mantle and Maris, sure, you'll do a double signed on that. But otherwise, it's the norm is you don't want to keep too many signatures on a ball. But anyway, I got the bug, and I attended 11 fantasy Tiger camps. This is where old guys play baseball for a week down in Lakeland, where the Tigers train. We go down in January, February, use the Tiger facilities, have their trainers. The Tigers bring in 20 retired Tigers to coach and manage us. So, I got a whole variety of retired player experiences through those fantasy camps. And then, Mike, I did a lot of mailings.
So you would mail a baseball to a player?
I'd mail baseballs out, and put $5 in the box and put postage return and all that. And say, hey, get a Starbucks or buy a beer on me, but please send me the ball back. And I got a lot of the guys in the 50s. The Tigers, if you could, had two really bad decades, the 50s and the 90s. But I built up a huge collection of 50 guys 20 years ago. Those guys are deceased now. But balls you just never find for a Tiger fan. The Tigers were not good in the 50s. But I got a really nice 50s collection by doing a lot of mailings. And but then, I had national auctions. My high-end baseballs came through Heritage and Leland and SCP, the high-end auctions. And I purchased those, and then, of course, there's always the eBay option. There's a lot of signing shows. I have a buddy in Detroit, Greg English. He would go to, he lives in Detroit, which from Grand Rapids, I know your client list probably is not Michigan-based, but it's 2-3 hour drive from where I live to get to Detroit. So I can't go in for every signing show, but Greg got me probably 100 baseballs over the years of, the signing shows in Detroit. So, it's a number of things, Mike, that just built this collection over the years. Now, I think you asked me, why did I sell it? Well, I'm 73 and, my grandkids like baseball, but they're not diehards per se. But two in Boston are Red Sox fans. At the museum event the other night, I had to blackmail them to get them to wear a Tiger hat and a Tiger shirt. They're big Red Sox fans, so they don't want 1,200 Tiger baseballs.
You didn't have to bribe me because
yeah, there you go.
It doesn't fit with my headset, of course, but yeah,
a
viewer just sent me that today.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. I've seen that hat before. Well, where did they wear that?
So that they wear that. It's their City Connect jersey.
Oh,
It started out as the Marathon Monday jersey because those are the Boston Marathon colors. And
oh
then
yeah,
I don't know, 5 to 10 years ago, they introduced them as an occasional jersey, and so that's the color of the
yeah.
jersey in the Boston Marathon.
I've seen that, and now thank you for giving me that background. But to finish off your question there, my wife, if I go to leave this earth before her, the last thing she wanted was 1,200 baseballs to deal with. So and I couldn't sell them off, Mike. I've got so much emotion and love for this collection. I wanted it preserved. I wanted it to stay together. I talked to different venues, different sporting teams, and the Grand Rapids Public Museum was clearly the place. They've invested heavily in building a great exhibit. It took them a year, and they've done a great job. So
Yeah, and you mentioned you sold it, but you donated it, right?
yes,
And you estimated the value in an article that I read at about 300,000, but you also cautioned that some of these items could blow up in an auction, right? So if you had auctioned them individually, some of them, we'll talk about a couple of them, like the Babe Ruth
yeah.
ball
Well,
could be.
first, just to jump in, I had the collection formally appraised by Leela Dunbar. I don't know if you ever watch Antique Roadshow.
Yeah, a little
Uh,
bit.
yeah, she's one of their lead appraisers. She's been in charge of the National Appraisers Association. She's based out of Washington, D.C. And I paid more to have her as an appraiser than others who quoted the appraisal work because of her credibility. And she valued the baseballs at $401,200. That was her. So from a tax standpoint, I'll get some. I won't get 400,000 in
Sure.
benefit back, but I'll get 20% of that or something back to help from a tax impact. To answer your question, but go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I interrupted you.
No, that's okay. I do want to go into some of the items, but you became a Tigers fan when?
It was 1961. I grew up outside of New York, in New Jersey, and I was a big Yankee fan. Oh man, I would love especially in the late 50s, right? The Yankees were winning pennants in early 60s. They were
Yeah.
winning pennants. So my father got transferred with the government. He worked for the Army as a civilian into the Detroit Arsenal tank plant. So all of a sudden I'm a Yankee fan in the middle of Detroit. And Detroit in '61 had a great team. Norm Cash won the batting title, but when the Tigers and the Yankees, I was 10 years old. They played each other. I cried when the Tigers beat the Yankees. I was living in Detroit at first, and after a year, I converted over and became a Tiger fan, and Rocky Colavito and K-Line and
Yeah.
Harvey, all those guys, and that's how it all happened.
Yeah. Uh, and so I have to ask, my viewers are going to want me to ask this question because I have a video that's probably my least popular video of all time where I argue that Jack Morris shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. So
Hmm.
I need to know, what is your opinion of Jack Morris?
Jack Morris. It's a close call, you know. Uh, I could see that one being a gray. Now, being a Tiger fan, hey, I'll take it.
Yeah.
But he's borderline, in my opinion.
Same with
Yeah,
Jim Rice
his
for
earned
me.
run averages. He had high earned run averages. Uh, you know, uh, the writers. He was a prickly personality. With the
Still
writers.
is.
With the writers, and so he got the vote still, which kind of surprised me. So to
Yeah.
answer your question, I'd say borderline.
Yeah. I'm also an autograph collector, and I've had a couple of my viewers send me, like, here's a Jack Morris rookie with a very faint autograph on
Yeah.
it, and then a 1982 tops. That because of this video, I did it 2 years ago, and people still talk about it, and people will send me Jack Morris autographs and Jack Morris cards.
Ah,
You
so what
talked,
what was your feelings? Probably below the bar to make it,
yeah. I'm not
the
a
Hall of Good, not the Hall of Great.
Hall of Very Good.
Yeah,
Certainly, yeah, I'm not a person who wants to remove anybody. Once you're in, and I think
yeah.
that's deserved. But I just feel like he got in based on a couple of statistics that are overblown,
Hmm.
and the 1991 World Series game, which was
Yeah.
spectacular. There's no doubt.
Yeah,
You
I guess
talked
what
about,
was he ended up being on 3 or 4 World Series teams,
Yeah.
Toronto, was it Minnesota and Detroit? So
Yeah.
that might have clinched it for him there too.
Yeah.
What's your take on Lou Whitaker?
Lou Whitaker should be in.
Yeah, I do too. That's what I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's no
Anyway.
question. Yeah. I grew up a little outside of Whitaker's peak, right? So he was a 79, 78 rookie.
Yeah.
And so I started following baseball when I was 8 in 1987. And so he was still good at that point. I remember him still being good, but I don't remember, even though he was in the AL and I watched a ton of American League games, I don't remember a whole lot about Lou Whitaker. But I definitely, looking back, his stats are well within what should have gotten him into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
He and Trammell.
Yeah, for sure. Those
Yeah.
guys, what, 19 years, or they were partners, and their statistics are so close to
Yeah.
each other. Scary. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
home runs and whatever it is, batting average, they were all so close to each other.
Yeah. And Cecil Fielder hit 50 home runs for the Tigers, right? Was that 1990?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was 11 years old, and my mom let me stay up to watch that game. And in fact, I stayed up late watching the games before it because I really wanted to see him hit his 50th home run.
Mm.
And I remember sleeping on the floor of the TV room for a few nights so I could watch him play and hit his
Yeah.
50th. That's a great memory. So yeah, before we get into the collection, I wanted to talk a little bit about through the mail autographs because I do through the mail autographs as well. And you talked about getting guys from the 1950s, and for me, those guys from the 1950s and 60s still are signing. Like Bill Mazeroski is still
Mm.
signing through the mail because they didn't do it for the money as much back then. They weren't making millions of dollars. They didn't really make much as baseball players, and so they had to really pump up the popularity of the sport by signing autographs for everybody, and they still do it. It's amazing. You can't get an autograph through the mail of very many current baseball players or even guys who have retired in the last 20 years.
I would agree. As they make more and more money, just even the fantasy camps, I don't think those are going to last because these players get $2,000 to come down and coach us for a week. Well, the guys in the '80s, in the '70s, sure, that was nice, and they could see their former players, their teammates. But the guys from in the last 20 years, they're $2,000. Forget it, and
Yeah.
they're not. I don't think they're going to show up at fantasy camps. That's my guess.
Yeah. So let's talk about, whoops, that's not what I wanted to do. Let me remove that. I want to talk about a specific ball. You probably know exactly which one it is. It is, once it comes up, it's just
Is
going
it
to take
the
a minute there.
Allan Travers, or
No,
was it?
it's the Babe Ruth ball, but for some reason it's
Oh, the
not.
Babe Ruth ball. Okay,
Yeah, go ahead and talk about it because for some reason my internet doesn't want me to share.
that's all right. The Babe Ruth ball.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I never planned to get a Babe Ruth ball in my collection. I'm a Tiger guy, um, and basically, when I found this ball, it was on a 1933 Tiger team ball, and Babe Ruth was on the sweet spot. And I saw it. I said, "Man, that is very unique." And so I wanted to really get this. It was out there on eBay. Surprisingly, eBay usually doesn't carry the high end baseballs, and I made an offer to the guy who owned it, and he wanted 6 or 7 thousand, maybe 8,000, whatever, for it. And I offered him 4,000, and I must have insulted him because there was no negotiation after that. It was just like radio silence. And I thought, darn, I really want this baseball. So I have a buddy in Detroit, Mike Mayman, who's a high end collector, and I said, Mike, I need your help. This guy, I think I insulted him. He's not returning my calls. So I had Mike buy it, bid it for 6,000, and I got it. And but Mike had to buy it for me. But I love that in my collection to have Babe Ruth. And what's interesting is Mike got the ball. He had it after he won it. He had it sent to his office, and the box came, and he threw out all the contents in the box except the baseball, all the paper, and he threw out the certification paperwork. So he sent me the ball. And I said, Mike, where's the, PSA is one of the leading authenticators,
Yep.
PSA DNA. And he goes, oh my gosh, I think I threw it out. So I had to send the ball back to PSA. It took 60 days, and they authenticated the ball, and I got it back. It cost me another $100.
Yeah, and it has a pretty interesting story, or at least a re- purported story of how Babe Ruth ended up signing a ball with a bunch of Tigers players on it, right?
Yeah, when the seller was communicating with me, he was telling me a story how back in the day, it was common. This was a 1933 team ball, so in those days, players after the game, they stayed together as a group, even the home team, and they would eat a meal and so forth. And a young boy went in to get the ball signed by Detroit Tiger players at a hotel restaurant. And the Tiger players told this young boy, hey, that the Yankees are upstairs. In fact, Babe Ruth, they maybe told him the room number, and go up and knock on his door. And perhaps this kid went up and got it signed by Babe Ruth on the sweet spot to complement the Tiger autographs that are on the other portions of the baseball. So can that be proven? I don't know. I don't know how. Everyone back then is dead now, but that's the story behind the ball, Mike. So
That's pretty great. Um, yeah, it's kind of one of those stories that you kind of say that can't be real, but it's authenticated by PSA, and so it's an amazing story. 1933 Tigers ball, and a kid takes it up and gets it autographed by the Babe.
yeah.
Uh,
Otherwise, I don't know how that would happen. Think about it.
right, it makes sense.
I mean, you can't get that at a ballpark. I mean, if you're at
Yeah,
a ball game, you're not going to get all these autographs. These players are up, warming up, they're running around, they're not leaning over the railing signing. This had to be away from the stadium.
yeah. So next up is this. I don't know why it's taking so long to share the screen, but it's the Ty Cobb ball that you have from
Yeah,
1961.
yeah,
Talk about
yeah.
that one.
Yeah, I got that in
There it
a
is.
heritage auction, and basically, I always wanted a Ty Cobb ball, and it just came where I just said, "This is the time." And so I was searching for a month or two different Ty Cobb balls, and you can see it says to Barbara Burns, and that lowers the value of the ball some when it's personalized. So I mean, if it was just a Ty Cobb signed ball, that thing would probably go for $25,000, if not more. But I picked this one up for, I'm going to say 7 or 8 thousand, maybe 10. I can't remember, but a lot less. But this was signed, he died. So this was signed, I'm looking at it like at March or so, early in 1961. And Cobb died, I think, in May of 61, just a couple months after signing this ball.
Yeah,
Yeah, so that's how I got this one.
yeah. It's such a cool item, and I find it interesting with more modern things. I don't want to see a two person, who I just don't want anybody signing an item over to me, like to Mike, even though I don't plan on selling. But for some reason, the much, much older items, the things that are signed by Babe Ruth and Ty Cobb, I like seeing that they signed it over to somebody because it always makes me wonder who that person is. And he took the time to write to Barbara Burns from Ty Cobb and dated it. It
Yeah,
just seems like there was something special there.
yeah, that could be. And I never researched Barbara Burns. I maybe I'll put that on my list. I'm retired now, and I have some free time, and see if is she notable or what if there's any connection.
Yeah. And then speaking of Cobb, you also have Al Travers.
That might be my favorite one.
Yeah, this is a pretty amazing one, and it's loading. I'm sorry this is taking so
That's
long.
okay. Have you ever heard of Al Travers before?
A little bit, I'm not pre-war baseball for me is not in my wheelhouse, but I'm
Yeah.
familiar with the Ty Cobb suspension game a little bit.
Yes.
Why don't you tell the story?
Yeah. Then you know a good portion of the story. Well, Ty Cobb got suspended back in 1912 in New York City. He went into the stands and he beat up a fan who was actually crippled in a wheelchair, who
Mm.
was saying bad stuff about him or his mother or something. And Ty Cobb got suspended by the commissioner of baseball for probably a week. And the Tigers didn't like that suspension, and they told the commissioner, "We're not going to play tomorrow in Philadelphia against the A's at that time." And the commissioner said, "Well, if you don't, you're going to get fined a large amount of money back then, more than the Tigers could afford or wanted to pay." And so they decided to be non-competitive. So they got into Philadelphia, and someone like the traveling secretary for the Tigers went out into the streets of Philadelphia and found Allan Travers, a 20-year-old student at a local college who was not a baseball player. He didn't even play at the college level. He was I read he was probably a scorekeeper for the college team. And they paid him $50 to pitch in May of 1912, a game in front of 25,000 people in Philadelphia. He gave up 24 runs, earned runs, 26 hits. He pitched a complete game. And it's just amazing, an amazing story. Later what I heard is, and this has been validated, he's the only Catholic priest ever he later became a Catholic priest, and he's the only Catholic priest ever to pitch or play in Major League Baseball. And I was so lucky to get that ball. I stumbled into it online, and it was owned by a gentleman named Allan Schwarz, Swarz, who happened to be a Pulitzer Prize finalist. And he bought this ball. He told me it was in his closet for 20 years. He bought it from a Sotheby's auction. I bought it maybe 8 or 10 years ago, and he had it in a closet for 20 years. And so I was on the phone negotiating with him to buy this thing, and I didn't really tie it down. And literally, I went downstairs, I turned on my TV to watch ESPN, and I'm not exaggerating. I turned it on, and Allan Schwarz was on ESPN being interviewed about CTE, the brain stuff
Course,
with
chronic
football players.
traumatic encephalitis.
Yeah, and he's an expert in this.
Huh.
And I said, "You got to be kidding me." I just hung up with him. I called him back. I went back upstairs to my office. I said, "Allan, I had no idea you were, this notable." And he's very humble, great guy. And I said, "Let's work a price on this thing. I'm going to donate this stuff." And he believed me. I said, "I'm not going to sell this thing," because he was saying he didn't know the value of it. I didn't know the value of it. Travers, as during his priesthood, and was primarily a teacher in Philadelphia high schools, was very embarrassed by this. He didn't like to talk about it. He thought it was, a mocking situation of him rather than something for him to be proud of. And so I've never seen a single sign. I've never seen his autograph anywhere. And Allan worked with me, and I bought the ball. So it's kind of a cool story.
That's great. Yeah, I'm just looking at the display. You actually have a Casey Fossum autograph, and Casey Fossum,
Yeah,
of course,
I know. Yeah, left-handed pitcher.
came up through the Red Sox organization.
Yeah, that's
Scrawny,
right.
very scrawny guy.
Yeah, little guy. Yeah, I remember.
Yeah.
I've met him once. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Let me see if I can share my screen in a different way.
Yeah, Casey
and
Fossum.
Get this working. But once that changes over, there we go. So here's what it looks like at the museum, right?
Yes.
That's staggering.
Yeah, and that's two sides of it. There's another wall that's not being shown.
Let's see if we can get the rest of it here.
Yeah.
Here's you got two seats. Is this yours too?
Yeah, no, yeah, that's the front of the exhibit. So the room with the baseballs is behind it. And those seats were actually donated by Dale Robertson, who's the CEO of the museum. Those are Tiger Stadium seats that were made in Grand Rapids, but they were in Tiger Stadium seats that he purchased when they knocked the stadium down and sold off the seats. So he donated those. People can sit there, Mike, have their picture taken, and then with the background, it looks like you're sitting in a stadium.
That is very, very cool. There's a little bit more here showing the 59 to 76 portion, right?
Yeah, so those go by time periods. So on the left are, the early years. The museum put them into categories. The earliest, like probably every 10 or 15-year time segments
Hmm.
from left to right. The oldest are on the left, and then you go to the right around the room and the years go up. It helps people find their favorite baseball.
Yeah, that's so cool. So you have over 1,200. Who did you not get that you really wanted?
Yeah, you, you remember Stan Pappy? He being a Boston guy.
The name is familiar, but I couldn't tell you anything about him.
I can't, I have his address. I've never seen Stan Pappy single signed. But there's, on these Bob Christian, he played on the 68 Tiger team. He died young. He was just a part-time player. His career was maybe 2 years, with 1 year with the Tigers, and I think 1 year or two with the White Sox. Can't find it. Can't find Bob Christian. Don McMahon. He was a credible pitcher for a number of years. Single sign ball. Can't find it. I
Huh.
cannot find it. I have those on paper. Gave them to the museum, but just surprisingly, Joe Gordon. He's a Hall of Famer, Yankee. And some of his are out there. Toward the end of my collecting time, I could have picked up Joe Gordon single sign for 15,000. And it was right about when I was ready to donate the collection. I just decided, I've put enough into this thing. I didn't go after it, but I don't have a Joe Gordon. But those would be some that I don't have.
Now, a guy who spent a couple years in Detroit, Boston Red Sox legend Johnny Pesky.
Yeah.
Did you have a ball of him?
Oh yeah, I got
Yeah,
Johnny Teskey. That ball is not an expensive ball. He
yeah,
lived to be quite old and signed a lot.
yeah.
Uh,
I was at a
so
game where he was recognized in must have been 2008 or 9, and he was up there in age at that point, but he was a very generous signer.
yeah, yeah. I bought that one in Cooperstown, the worst place to buy a ball. I mean,
Yeah,
anything's going to be overpriced.
yes,
Not a place. But I was there when Trammell and Morris went in to the Hall of Fame and walking around their shops, and so I bought my Johnny Pesky ball there.
that's great.
They say Ted Williams, right? It wasn't he the one who probably got Pesky into the Hall of Fame? If I remember correctly.
Yeah, I mean Ted Williams and Pesky, they've obviously played at the same time on the Red Sox. I don't know the story about the two of them. Ted Williams was famously prickly with fans and media, but
Yeah,
beloved by teammates.
yeah. So
Yeah. So what else is there? I'm looking through here. I had a couple things that I wanted to cover, and I think we've covered them. But you have so many interesting things. Let me.
yeah, I have the K line. One thing I really liked. It's not a baseball, but I have when Al Kaline passed away 2 or 3 years ago, and his estate put a number of his collectibles up in a heritage auction. So Kaline had 10 gold gloves during his career, and I went after his last one, the 1967 Gold Glove, and I won that. And now that's in the exhibit. That one I did not donate. That's the only thing I didn't donate. That's on a 5-year loan. I'll keep it there longer, uh, as long as the exhibit stays open. The museum committed a 5-year minimum time period for the exhibit. But that one I went back, and that will end up with a grandchild.
Nice. And you had an Eddie Gaedel ball too, which I wasn't able
Eddie,
to find a photo of it. But talk about that one.
I will. I'd love to talk about Eddie Gaedel. I mean, that is in 1951. Probably as you know, Bill Veeck,
Yep.
supreme marketer, came up with this idea to bring fans in. He was a businessman. He didn't have a lot of money. He bought these teams on a shoelace, and he had to make money. So he would run promotions, and one of his promotions was to bring in. Back then, they used the term midget. It's not politically correct today.
Yeah,
Eddie
dwarfism,
Guy,
right?
What's that?
He had dwarfism.
Yes. So my daughters correct me on that all the time.
Yes.
Dwarfism, and and he put Eddie in the second game of a doubleheader in August in 1951. And the strike zone was so small. Bob Kane, the Detroit pitcher, 4 pitches. It was like Eddie's on first base, and they took him out of the game immediately after because his ability to run to second and third, or it wouldn't work. But that's a famous game, and there's only 10. There it is, great picture. There's only 10 known autographs of Eddie in existence, and mine is on paper, and some are on baseball, but not many. He died young. He went in. I guess he was leaving a bar, and he was beat up, sadly, and he died. And I've got that autograph in an auction, and I'm very proud of it. And I built around that. I built around that autograph a collection of baseballs from not only the St. Louis Browns, who he played for. I had Bill Veeck, I had the manager, I had the umpires, I had the guy who pinch ran for him, the guy who he pinch hit for. I had all the Tigers in that 51 game who were in the lineup and in the field when Eddie was batting. I got all of them. So I put together a whole thing around Eddie Geidel. But
That's really cool.
that's really cool.
That was when I was a little kid. I remember hearing the story and seeing that photo of Eddie Geidel, and I was just fascinated by this little man that was put into a game, and he saw 4 pitches, all were balls, and he walked, and it was the only time ever appearing in a major league game. And then, of course, Veeck went into the Hall of Fame as an executive. And isn't there a book called Veeck as in Wreck about
Yeah,
Bill Veeck? Yeah,
yeah. And his son, Mike Veeck, was a baseball guy too, and ran minor league teams, and even worked for a major league team, and was wild and crazy with marketing, just like his father. Still
yeah.
living, Mike Veeck. Yeah.
Was it Bill Veeck who had the uh, burning the disco?
Yeah.
Was that him on the
Yeah.
field?
And I
Yeah,
think it might have been more Mike, but I think Bill was around it, but I think it was more his son's
yeah,
baby, which turned into a disaster.
yeah. It's
Disco night.
yeah,
It was
that's
called,
right.
it was called
Your
disco.
well, Steve, your collection is amazing. Was amazing. I mean, you donated it. It's still yours, I guess. Kind of. Your dedication to collecting historic items and completion, the completion of this collection is staggering and impressive. And I want to show my appreciation by bringing you on and sharing it with my viewers who are also. I talk about other sports a little bit, but I'm like 80 to 90% baseball,
Mm,
and my viewers love baseball and baseball history. So I'm glad that you came on. Thank you very much.
yeah. If I could make one last plug,
Please.
Jim O'Laughlin,
Yes.
who loves all that you do, and he's the one who connected me and you. He worked at a firm where I worked for many years. And when Jim heard about the exhibit, he said, Crow, which is the name of our company, Crow. We're an accounting and consulting firm. And he said, Crow has to become the title sponsor. And
Yeah.
within a week, well, I guess he was knocking on doors of the various partners and the people there, and came up with $25,000
Wow.
that allowed Crow to become the title sponsor and help promote and allow this exhibit to be the best it could be. So special thanks to Jimmy
Yeah.
O'Laughlin.
Yeah, and he'll watch this. He's the one who hooked us up here as a viewer of my channel. So I appreciate Jim for connecting us on this, because he reached out to me 10 days ago and said, I was thinking about reaching out to you about uh, Jim's friend Steve, and then I had talked about you briefly on that video, and then he said he knew it was the perfect opportunity since I had just
Yeah.
mentioned you and your collection. So I thank Jim as well. Sounds like you guys worked together for a long time.
Yeah. Jim is a good man.
Good.
Well, thank you. I love talking to you, and good. I've heard so many good things about what you're doing. So I'm honored to be on.
Thank you. And I also want to give a shout out to my friend Frank, who's also on YouTube, and he is in Detroit, or at least outside of Detroit somewhere. and he goes by Hall of Fame. Oh shoot, now I'm gonna mess this up. Hall of Fame autographs. Shoot, Hall of Fame autograph
Hmm.
baseball. Of course,
But
I'm gonna mess this up.
he has a collection.
He has an insane baseball Hall of Fame collection, and he,
Ah,
by the way, is a CPA, and he's in the Detroit area.
hmm.
And I'm gonna I can't believe I'm messing up his channel name. I'm gonna look it up because he's gonna yell at me. He won't really because he's the nicest
Okay.
guy.
Yeah,
But
that's fine. Well, that's
uh,
cool. So he has
Hall of
but his is all Hall of Famers. It's no matter what team, right?
every team. Yeah,
Yeah.
he has some Hall of Famers where he's the only one who has the autograph of the
Wow.
Hall of
I wonder if
Famer.
he has Joe Gordon. Yeah, that'd be cool.
Baseball. Why is this so hard? I'm gonna mess it up. Well, he will comment on this.
He'll
Anyway,
call you. He'll rib
all
you.
right. Yeah. All right, Steve, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. This was
My
great.
pleasure, Mike. You
All
have a
right.
good one.
You
Go
too.
Boston. Yeah.
Thanks. Bye.